Noah's Ark is a fascinating tale that invariably graces the pages of every illustrated children's Bible. However, given current understandings of phylogeny, geology, paleontology, geomorphology, anthropology, limnology, archaeology, history, astronomy, geography, naval engineering, and on and on and on, few accredited academic sources give the story as literally related to us in the Bible any credence as an actual event. There are many excellent videos on YouTube discussing the various problems associated with a literal biblical flood and a literal Noah's Ark. Links to several can be found to the right of the screen, and I encourage everybody to check them out. Often the topic of dinosaurs comes up when discussing Noah's Ark, and biblical literalists, wedded to the notion of a 6,400-year-old Earth, contend that dinosaurs were among the animals brought on board. When confronted with the myriad problems this scenario would create, the usual Christian apologetic response is that the dinosaurs were brought on as juveniles or that they were brought on as eggs. Unfortunately, how Noah was able to ascertain the sex of the dinosaurs and the eggs and prevent inadvertent extinction remains a mystery that will have to wait for another time. This video addresses a topic that has not, to my knowledge, been covered on any other video on YouTube, and that is how the many now extinct mammalian megafauna that scientists contend existed between the Paleocene epoch, which followed the mass extinction of the dinosaurs, and the end of the Pleistocene epoch, approximately 14,000 years ago, would fit on the Ark. For the purpose of this video, an operative definition is utilized which classifies megafauna as mammals which, when mature, would weigh a minimum of 300 pounds. The Ark, according to Genesis 6:15, was 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, and 30 cubits tall. The measurement for a cubit was somewhat arbitrary, constituting the distance from a man's elbow to the tip of his longest finger. Many creationist sources give a length of 18 inches, so we'll go with that too. That makes the Ark 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, and 45 feet high. That would give each deck a floor space of 33,750 square feet. Since Genesis indicates that the Ark was comprised of 3 decks, the question addressed here will be how many megafauna would it take to fill just a single deck of Noah's Ark? We'll leave the still existing animals, the dinosaurs, Noah's family, the rest of the extinct mammalian megafauna, and the food, and all the rest of the stuff to take up the remaining space. Creationists, when confronted with the vastness of animal biodiversity currently on the planet, will often put forth the idea that animals were stacked in cages. However, given a ceiling height of 15 feet per deck, which still excludes the width of floorboards and ceiling joists, this would have been difficult with many of the animals addressed in this video. In fact, animal height was not even included in the analysis, despite the fact that some extinct mammals, such as Paraceratherium, exceeded 15 feet in height. Given the incredible number of animal species alive today, creationists often try to whittle down the number of animals on the Ark by stating that God did not say that every species was brought on the Ark, but instead every kind of animal. Sticking to megafauna, this would mean that just one kind of elephant to represent all elephants and one kind of rhino to represent all rhinos would be on the Ark. This is a rather flawed argument, however, because currently there are 3 known species of elephants in existence, 2 from the Loxodonta genus and 1 from the Elephas genus. Loxodonta and Elephas have not shown the capacity to interbreed and produce viable, healthy offspring. In the case of the rhinoceros, there are even more genera. Thus, it would be reasonable to conclude that kind, at minimum, would be analogous to genus. Applying this to extinct animals, for example, there are currently 13 known distinct species of mammoths. However, since they are all to be found in the Mammuthus genus, only one of those 13 species gets a ticket on the Ark. The question then becomes, how many genera of extinct mammalian megafauna would fit on one deck of the Ark? To answer the question, calculations were made of the minimum pen size needed for animals. Genesis indicates that animals were kept in rooms. It would be fair to assume that the minimum length for each room would be the length of the animal's body. Additionally, since the Ark was afloat for a little over a year, it would also be humane to allow the animals at least the space to comfortably turn around, have a bit of bedding, and have some space for food. Accordingly, the room's width will be equal to its length. The basic formula is therefore that of a square, length times width. Creationists frequently cite how many sheep could be stuffed in a boxcar as evidence of how many animals could be held on the ark. This is a fallacious comparison because the sheep are only in such horribly crowded conditions for a few days, not a whole year. Additionally, there is no need to worry about such things as breeding and predator-prey relationships. For example, throw just one Andrewsarchus into a boxcar full of sheep and count them at your next whistle stop. So the following table represents calculations based upon the size of known extinct genera of megafauna. In instances where the exact length of certain animals was not known, it was conservatively estimated based upon either height or weight. Naturally, since at least 2 of each kind was brought on the ark, calculations had to be doubled. In general, all of the figures here represent conservative estimates, and I encourage you to check them for yourselves. Additionally, some of the animals would, by biblical standards, be considered clean animals, in which case, as Genesis 7:2 states, 14 animals would need to be brought aboard the ark. However, for the sake of conservative estimates, all are classified as unclean. As you can see, I simply stopped adding animals to the list when I reached 89 genera, given the figure 30,989 square feet was needed for the accommodations. This leaves just under 2,800 square feet of free space on the deck. After all, it's necessary to leave some room for, among other things, the ramps many creationists contend connect to the decks, the aisles to access the animals, hull support beams, and other things. Yes, I've heard the argument before. Creationists would no doubt assert, given the figures, that very young animals were brought onto the ark, not mature adults. In the case of mammals, however, one cannot take the argument too far. Unlike other animal classes, such as reptiles, mammals remain with their parent for a considerable time to procure necessary survival skills such as hunting and foraging. Those skills would also have to be sufficiently inculcated to assure that they could utilize them after 1 year in the ark. Such skills would be necessary in a post-flood world. Of course, very young mammals also require milk for sustenance. Additionally, given a 1-year travel time, the fact that juvenile animals would grow during that period must also be considered. On the whole, the estimates are very generous, and further extinct megafauna genera could easily be added to the list if biblical literalists wanted animals to be shrunk. Enough, in fact, to crowd poor Noah and his family onto a gopher wood life craft. However you look at it, the conclusion is ultimately the same when reached by sane scholars and skeptics both on YouTube and beyond. You can't fit all of those animals on the goddamn boat.